Okay, I should start the interview by saying thank you so much for finding the time to sit down and chat with me. I suppose we should start at the very beginning. So, how did your love of theatre begin?
Oh, Rhys, I think my love of theatre really began with early exposure to um, in school, to be
Mm,
honest. The works of Harold Pinter, Edward Albee,
mhm.
Shakespeare himself. I think
Yes.
the idea that you can have two people talking on stage about a pair of scissors that they're looking for,
Hmm.
and you go, this isn't really a conversation about scissors. And
Hmm.
and something in the subtext really appealed. I love the immediacy of the
Hmm.
performance. I love the responsibility that the audience have to be quiet and to respect this thing
Hmm.
that on any given day could look and sound different. And I guess, look, I was very lucky in that I had parents that were interested in that sort of thing, and that interest made its way to me.
And so, how did you get into writing, and how did your writing journey begin?
I really shouldn't be allowed to write. I'm a dyslexic. Uh, I'm a dyslexic bad speller, badly organized. Um, don't really structure things very well. But to be honest, I think somewhere around the first year of university,
Mm,
I suddenly felt this outpouring of emotion when I wrote, and it felt like I was expelling something, and it felt like I was giving hidden things within my soul a little
mhm,
bit more space and a little bit more kind of credit. And seeing them on the page, there was couldn't, no way that I could lie and say
mm,
I wasn't feeling like that. So it started in short stories. I then sort of wrote one man shows with a
mm.
view of maybe performing them at the Fringe because I was at Edinburgh at the time,
Wow.
and that and that I also loved acting, but my mother told me I was 98% nostril flare and I should never act. And actually, that would be me doing the theatrical world a big, generous, good deed uh, in never stepping foot on a stage again. So I found there was just such freedom in
Mm,
writing, Reese, and I thought it was a way for me to, explore themes that scared me, that
mm,
interest me, that provoked me. I love decay. I love, you know, when decay presents itself in relationships or conversations. I love you can go from having one conversation about doing the dishes
mm.
to reevaluating 10 years of marriage like that, if
Yeah.
it's well deployed, which continues to be the mission.
Totally. And obviously, despite, dyslexic and being sort of, in your own words, sort of disorganized, and obviously your writing went very well because, and we can cut this out if you don't want to talk about it, but you are Emmy nominated for your writing. So what was it like to get the nomination?
Oh, look, it was a great piece of work.
Hmm.
I was very lucky to be part of a big team. Um, and I was sort of quite fresh in America. I didn't really understand
Oh.
what that meant in terms of the importance of it.
Hmm.
But I sling it around and I'll use it where I can. And I think in our world, there's so many talented people
Hmm.
doing good, interesting, relevant, timely, progressive work. That if I can do anything that stands out a little bit,
Yeah.
um, I'll be happy to do that.
Totally. And so where did the idea of Woman Seeking Cuddles come from? Where did that start?
Well, thank you so much for the question. I was on a date in New York. I'd recently had my heart broken by
Wow.
my long-term ex-partner, and I was on a date trying to do that thing
Hmm.
because I've always described myself as being like two sides of a
Hmm.
coin. On the one side, it's sort of pristine,
Hmm.
and that's the romantic side of me, which is really all I want. The other side is scratched and damaged, and does risky things with risky people, and but I'd never really dated because I'm a romantic, and I feel like if I don't feel like I'm hit over the head
Hmm.
by the cosmos upon meeting someone, I don't usually give it the
Hmm.
time. But I thought I will date because it will at least get me out of the house and
Yeah.
make me have a shower. And this wonderful young woman that I was on a date with showed me a picture of her sperm donor father and said, I've never met him. Isn't he hot? I'd love to shag him. And from then,
What?
and Reese, I'm sure you know what this is like. From then, I just started hearing voices, and I had this idea in my head of a woman who's about to leave town,
Mm.
who on her last night meets, unbeknownst to her, her biological father. And he doesn't know it either. And they pop off, for lack of a better word. But before it gets too intense, it stops because his ID falls out of his pocket and she recognizes the name.
Uh,
But I think, in the world that we're in, with all the conversations around polyamory and multiple partners
mhm,
and safe sex and risky sex and people who conform to non-binary dating and non-binary identities. I think there's never been a richer time
mm,
to try and tell different types of stories. But as a man writing this from the perspective of a woman, although it's a heteronormative story in essence, it feels like it's at least the entry point to something interesting and worth exploring.
mm. Was it always sort of written as a one-person show? Did you have that in your mind from the very beginning?
I did,
Mm,
almost like I love the sort of confessional style of one
mm,
person shows. I think the writer of Girls and Boys, Dennis Kelly, talks about that immediacy of
mhm.
the one person show. I love them. I love them. And I feel sort of hack saying, oh, it's a one person show, as if it's a new idea. Of course, it's not. I rewatched the Queen herself, Phoebe Waller Bridge, last night
Mhm,
at the national celebratory 10-year anniversary performance. And it reminded me the richness and the simplicity of that
mhm.
medium.
Mm. And so does it sort of change the way you approach the project, knowing that it's a one-person production? Does that change your sort of writing process or your idea creation?
Yes. Great, great question. Very, a very insightful question. Thank you, Rhys. It has made me be far more clipped
Mm,
in how I say things. How I would just, I've just finished writing a novel, and how I would describe this
mm,
conversation might take pages.
mm,
Uh, in a play, you don't have that luxury, certainly in something that's aiming to be around 53 minutes.
mhm,
So instead of describing you and your appearance and the backdrop that you have and the shirt that you're wearing, it's
mm,
Reese and I talked like old friends or knew something else. I think you've got to find, and
mm,
and I'm you might have already realized I don't really do clips. So that staccato
mm,
delivery was always a challenge. And I hope there's some good stuff in there. It's around 7,400 words now, which works at
mm.
53 minutes. It's a tiny bit cramped at the top, but once we get through the
Yeah.
first, once as long as the pacing's down, I feel. But look, for me, the writing process was all about
Mm,
working with an all-female identifying crew, of course, casting a female identifying character as the lead and leaning on them
mm,
to be like, tell me when this doesn't sound
mm.
femme. You know, I don't want to be a writer who thinks that the only thing I can write about women is like, I was in a bad mood because I was on my period. Like
Yeah.
my understanding of women, I hope, at 36 is a little more nuanced than.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned it earlier, but obviously you're writing as a man from the perspective of a woman character. So what was it like sort of getting into the mind of the character and did that change how you approached the writing process?
It did. I mean, there's an awful lot of me on the page.
Hmm.
There's there's instances of sexual abuse and assault,
Hmm.
which I've experienced, and so that sort of stuff is
Mm.
universal in
Yeah.
its horror, and doesn't have a face or a name or a gender. But I think certainly there were aspects of the position that I want
Mm.
romance and I want a relationship from might be very different from how female
Mm.
identifying individuals walk the planet. So it did require a certain embodiment,
Mm.
but there's so much of me on there, Reese.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, so much of me in there that I hope the themes are universal enough for
Mm.
someone not to go, well, this stinks of
Yeah.
male BO as opposed to female BO. I keep my fingers
Mm.
I keep my fingers crossed that the right sort of stenches come off it.
And obviously, I know you've written lots and lots of stuff, but obviously, for people who haven't written a story before, what is it like seeing your ideas come to life on the stage, seeing what you've come up with and planned, brought to life, literally?
So moving.
Mm,
I watched the actor Hannah, who's just formidable and phenomenal, have a one-on-one coaching session the other week with her wonderful coach, Robin Ross, who's based here in New York and has been very complimentary about the script.
mm,
And I watched these two magnificent women talk about my work,
mm.
and it moved me to tears. It's the
Oh.
most rewarding thing. When they're saying, what do you think the intention here was? And I'm thinking, There wasn't any. I'm pretty sure I was drunk when I
I
ran
had a
off it.
deadline.
But yeah, exactly. Oh, it's called being under the cosh. Um, oh, it's so moving and it's so rewarding. And look, with something like theatre,
Mm,
my job is only half of it.
yeah.
It's all about how Hannah Strauss will embody it, how Willow Funkhauser, the director, will envisage it, and having them have the opportunity to channel their stuff
Mm,
is a gift, is a real gift. I don't mean that like a skill. I mean it's like a gift that that I'm able to
yeah.
share, and it's that's a treat.
Mm. So from the sort of building of the show and coming up with the ideas, obviously it's gained momentum because fairly recently you had a very exciting announcement that you are heading to the Edinburgh Fringe, like the world's biggest theatre festival. So what was it like getting that sort of announcement, that invite to the world's biggest theatre festival?
Very scary, and
Mm,
it's raised everyone's game.
mm,
You know, I've performed at the Fringe,
mm,
a terrible play that I wrote and starred in, which I shouldn't have, back in 2011. Um, and I said, look, people will leave
mm.
and they'll yell at you as they do, and they might throw a can of lager at you.
Wow.
But also, the bar here is we must try and strive for perfection.
Hmm.
I had a big sound design conversation last night where there were elements of it that just needed to be better.
Mm,
And we have to be conscientious. We have to see how lucky we are, and we have to honour the long held tradition of the Fringe, because
mm.
there has been work that is not as good as ours that have done really well because everyone wanted it that, and there'll be huge amounts of work that's way better
Yeah.
and was let down
Mm,
because people treated it as a jolly. So it's a real reckoning, and we are honoured to be
mm.
part of a program of 3,000 other shows.
Oh, and how are you sort of preparing for that journey, for that long trip to the Edinburgh Fringe?
I'm eating things out of cans because I'm going to have no money.
Hmm.
Um, it turns out chickpeas are very versatile when eaten with a spoon. Um, and honestly, at this particular moment, Reese, it's about observing where I can, trying to be
Mhm.
additive, not resting on my laurels, and
Mm,
supporting the actor Hannah, running lines with her, just making sure that we try and control the controllables,
mhm.
because there'll be stuff that happens that will be out of our control. She
Yeah,
might get the yips one night. That's a bodily thing.
yeah,
She's got no control over it. It happens all the time. A light might fall from the ceiling. You know, there's stuff, there might be music and noise from outside. We can't control that stuff.
yeah.
What we can control is stepping up, taking responsibility for our roles, and
Hmm.
supporting one another.
Totally. So obviously we've talked about the show, but for people who've not heard of Woman Seeking Cuddles before, how would you describe the show to them?
Women Seeking Cuddles is the retrospective storytelling of a woman's last night in her small hometown before leaving for grad school in New York,
Hmm.
where she discovers online dating and wrestles with this duality in society between women's worth and value historically resting on having a family,
Hmm.
and this new phenomenon of staying single for longer, self actualization, being selective. And it's navigating the difficult world within which modern
Mm.
dating, polyamory, non-monogamy exists in a world where, frankly, destiny is starting to feel algorithm-driven.
Hmm.
It's messy, it's chaotic, it's fun. There's music, there's a musical element to it, but
Wow.
it is visceral and it is not for the faint-hearted. And I really hope people come and see it and enjoy it. And it's only 50 minutes, so you can hold a wee if you need it. We'll do it in a bottle. But we're in a brilliantly prestigious space in the
Mhm.
Stevenson Theatre, and if you like Fleabag, if you like dating stories, if you like messy truths of womanhood and femininity and sex and drug taking and alcohol, this one's for you.
And so if they do want to come see, where can they get tickets and where can people stay up to date with you?
Well, they can come to the Stevenson Theatre.
Hmm.
We're on between the 7th and the 22nd of August
Hmm.
at varying times, largely between 7:45 and 8:45, and then 9:30 to 10:30. We have 1 or 2 days in between that. Women Seeking Cuddles has an Instagram page. I have an Instagram page. INWMCAS is my Instagram handle. And please come one, come all. We hope that people leave, you know, with a greater sense of sort of empathy for themselves,
Hmm.
a sort of we'd like them to leave with a reminder of just how important hope is, and that love is the greatest,
Mm.
most propelling force of all.
Mm. I'll put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. But we have come to my final question, which is what advice do you have for sort of young writers looking to do what you do?
Oh, listen, I'm looking for advice. So anything they've got, I'll be happy to have.
Mm.
But I think with writing, like most things, but with writing, just write.
Hmm.
Write, and appreciate the process and understand that sometimes something has to be really big before it can get small
Hmm.
again. And ultimately, it's about being fearless in what you're putting out on the page. Don't hold yourself back. Don't self edit. Get it all out because you'll feel better if nothing else after it. But if
Mm.
you can find a little personal truth and talk about that in a universal way, which is made to connect with people, you're onto something. So I love any and all writers and anyone first putting pen to page, just keep going.
Hmm.
Keep going and don't listen to people. Follow your heart, follow your guts.
Mm, totally. Obviously, I said it at the beginning, but I'll end the same way. Thank you so much for taking the time out to sit down and chat with me. As I mentioned, I'll put the links in the comments below so people can.
The pleasure is all mine,
Oh,
Reese. Thank
thank you
you.
so much. I'll put the links in the comments below so people can scroll down and click away. And I obviously wish you all the best of luck at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I shall speak to you soon.